Hello again, Cedar Life Church. Great as we come towards the end of the year. Looking forward to moving back to face-to-face services. I'm sure I certainly am, and I'm sure you are as well. But good to still connect online as well, and we want to continue having these conversations and talk about the weekend message. And last weekend we had a great message on singleness. Now that's not something I remember that well. I got married relatively young when I was 22 years of age. I do remember being single as a teenager, but that's a long time ago. But it was really good. It's an important topic for us to focus on, and great to have Brisita and Peter Yao, Brisita Rojas and Peter Yao sharing on the weekend. And we have Brisita with us today. Good to have you here, Brisita.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Good to be here with you.
Now, you've just been married for a few weeks now, so being single is more of a fresh memory in your mind and heart.
Yeah, it's our 1 month anniversary today.
It's your 1 month anniversary.
1 month today. We made it.
Great.
So you certainly are able to compare what it's like to be both single and married, and I thought that was part of the richness of the message that you shared. I was really struck at the beginning, and it's interesting, being senior minister, I was not aware how many people in city life over the age of 18 are actually single. So why don't you tell us, because I think that's a very important statistic for us to be aware of as a congregation. How many are single at City Life?
So roughly 26% of those over the age of 18 are single at City Life Church. And then we actually have around 1/3 of those over the age of 35. So we have a lot of people in our church that are single, and a lot of those aren't, young adults, finding their career before they find their life partner or anything like that. It really is quite a diverse age group.
Yes, so we're really talking about a significant age group within City Life. I was so struck by it, I thought I'd just do a little bit of research, and I tried to find out how many people are single people within Victoria. That's not so easy to find, but it was interesting to find out how many people actually live alone in Victoria. Have you any idea how many live alone?
I don't know, but I imagine it'd be fairly similar to our church, maybe 26%, let's say.
Yeah, it's about that. I think it's 24.7%, something like that, living alone in Victoria. So that's not just single people, say, living in shared accommodation or with relatives. It's actually people living alone. And I was kind of wondering whether that might be a bit of a trend in our society. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think people are getting married older. You said you got married at 22. I think particularly in a secular context, when, people getting married at 22 is like, why would you do that? Why would you get married at 22? Why wouldn't you go and travel the world and, do all these
I did that too, by the way. I did that a bit younger.
Well, not everyone grew up as a missionary, Andrew. So, I think that we definitely are seeing a trend for people getting married later. I think that the average age for marriage is late 20s now, maybe even 30. And having children is moving further back as well. So we're definitely seeing a massive shift in our culture around the age people get married and, the age that they start having children as well. So people are staying single for longer.
Yes, and so I think it's very important for us as a church to be aware of those trends, both within our church community, but also within the wider community. So thank you very much to you and Peter for sharing on this important but sensitive topic. I was fascinated that you did a bit of a survey on Facebook beforehand, just asking about some of the muddled assumptions people had about singleness, and you mentioned a couple of them. What were they? There's a couple of the top two assumptions. I'll be interested in some of the others as well. What were those assumptions?
So the ones that I discussed in the message on the weekend was that no one wants to be single. So it was this assumption that people had where people were saying, I tell people I'm single and they feel sorry for me, or they think that I need to change it, or they're like, I could set you up with someone. And people are like, I'm very happy just being single at the moment. This is something that I'm really choosing at this time of my life. So that was a big one, like a lot of people saying that they really struggled with that. And the other assumption was that people who were single had so much time on their hands, were so busy, were so, free, hanging out, all these things. When we actually spoke to a lot of single people, they said they really felt, at times they felt alone. They felt they didn't have a sense of community. They felt like a lot of times people go and do their family things and they're kind of like It's just me on my own. So a real sense of need for community out there. So those were the ones I touched on in my message. But honestly, Andrew, I had so many comments that we could write books on this. It was just like overwhelming, the response. And just funny little things that people say to single people out there, like just the classic cliches you get as a single person. But a big one I think as well that came up was people being told that this season is a season to pursue God with your whole heart, which is true, but also really holding that in the tension of wanting to be married and wanting to meet somebody as well. So how do they do that well? And I think that was a big one that came across as well that we didn't have time to cover on the weekend.
So people do make all these assumptions about singleness, and so I think it's good to bring that to the front and actually address some of those assumptions as you did in your message. You also did a great job, I thought, of looking at the scriptures and looking about how Jesus radically, in a sense, confronted or turned on its head some of the assumptions in his own culture about singleness. So why don't you tell us about us? Give us a quick summary. What was Jesus' view on singleness?
Goodness. Well, Jesus was single. He obviously thought it was good because he was single. So I think there's a real sense of the value of being single. But it's not even so much about pitting marriage and singleness together, which is, I think sometimes we get into the trap of doing that, where it's just like, oh, if you're single, you've got this, or if you're married, you've got this opportunity. And I don't think it's about that. I think what Jesus really does is that he says that your value doesn't come from being married. Your legacy doesn't come from the children that you have. It comes from pursuing God. And I think that's something that single people can do and do so well. I know so many single people that are doing this brilliantly. But it's also something that married people can do. It's really just zoomed out of the day-to-day things that we get caught up in and said, actually, our heart's pursuit should be the kingdom of God, and that is where the reward comes. The prize, I always say, and I used to say this a lot as a single person, I used to say, my prize is Jesus. Like, the prize isn't marriage, the prize isn't kids, the prize is Jesus. He is the prize for following him, pursuing him in the kingdom. It's knowing him more. And I think that that's what Jesus does. He radically overturns this mentality that Jewish culture had at the time around the value of marriage, and that it was like the be-all and end-all. And what Jesus says, it's not the be-all and end-all. In fact, the pursuit of Jesus, the pursuit of the kingdom of God is the be-all and end-all.
So he wasn't diminishing the value of marriage. He was raising the value of being single, right, even by his own example. But you did make a statement, and I think it was quite a confronting statement. You said that one of the assumptions people make is that all you need is Jesus. Now, that's kind of a cliche, and you think, yeah, well, that's right. But in fact, why do you think that's a bit of a muddled assumption about singleness?
Yeah, I was worried I was going to lose some people there.
I don't think you did. I think it's good to ask a challenging or make a challenging statement.
Look, I think that sometimes we think that like all a person would, like we throw that line around, like all you need is Jesus. And I said the statement, it's a little bit like telling a starving person, like, hey, Jesus, all you need is Jesus, or like Jesus fasted for 40 days, you can do this, instead of buying them a meal and providing for them practically. I think that if all we needed was this God that we read about, that we heard about, and that we experienced, then Jesus wouldn't have come as an actual person. Jesus came and he dwelt amongst us and he lived in community with us, because he was about, he's not just about some lofty idea. He's about being present and practically serving the needs of people around. He's taught us what it meant to be the hands and feet in our community, and to live out what it means to practically live out the gospel, what it practically means to live out the word of God. And so for us, we can't just say, Jesus is all we need. Like, I just sit in my belief and my reflection on Jesus. No, it's about going and doing. It's coming and seeing who Jesus is and going and doing his work. And part of going and doing his work is about being a welcoming community. It's about opening our arms up to people who might be feeling marginalized or on the edge or lonely or missing something in their lives, which is the experience of some singles. Not all singles, but definitely there's a lot of singles that feel that sense of being on the fringes, being marginalized, feeling a sense sense of loneliness. And as a church, if we want to live out the practical experience of Jesus, it's about meeting people in those places of need. It's about creating that belonging. Otherwise, I don't think Jesus would have come. If he didn't care about that, he wouldn't. I don't think he would have come personally. I'm not God, but I would make that prediction that being present is very important.
So it comes across, we love God, but we also loving each other is very important, and it's that balance. So yes, as any follower of Christ, we need Jesus, but we need each other, and Jesus himself taught and expressed that importance of valuing others and loving others. So how can we do that? Me as a married person, married for now almost 40 years, how can I make room for singles in my life? How can I practically help, or help's too weak a word, how can I actually be more inclusive in my relationships to lift the value of those who are single?
Yeah, well, I mean, congrats on 40 years of marriage, Andrew. That's amazing. Like, good on you.
Next year.
Yeah. I would say I love the word that you use there, like being inclusive. And I also love using the word empowering as well, because I think that, we talk about singleness being this amazing opportunity, and particularly like we talk about this in church. Singles have this incredible opportunity, this incredible time to pursue God with all their heart, and it can be their main focus. And Paul speaks about that as well in the Bible. And yet, we so often try to like set people up like, oh, you're single, I know someone. Oh, you're single, oh, it'll happen for you. Rather than empowering them and being like, that's awesome. Like, how are you pursuing God in this season? So it's about getting that mind shift for us as well. I think that some big things that people can do is I focused on 3 in my message was asking. So ask what the need is, because everybody that is single experiences singleness in different ways and at different times. I know that there were days where I loved being single. Like I absolutely loved it. I was like, oh, this is just the best. I love it. I love it. I love it. And there were other days where I would just be, crying out to God, surely there is someone out there for me, and you're taking your sweet time. So it's just such a diverse experience for me personally, and I think it is the same for a lot of people. So different times in my life it was like this, other times it was like that, and had different needs. And so I think it's really important with single people to ask them, like, how are you going with that? Do you have any needs at the moment? How can I help with that? So asking them about their story and what their experience is in singleness. And then I think it's really important to listen to their experiences, not listen with a cliched answer like, oh, it'll happen for you, or, you just need to get into the Word of God, and that will, while those things are helpful, I think it's not going to really capture, if they're telling you what they need, like really listen for what they need in this season. And then finally, I think the most important thing is to really serve our single community with what those needs are. If we're doing the asking and the listening well, we'll know how to serve well. So for some of my single friends, it's driving them to the airport. For others of my single friends, it's setting them up on blind dates. They're like, who do you know? Set me up. And so that's what their need is at the time. For others, it's about not even bringing it up. They don't even want to talk about it. They're not in a space to. They don't want to be defined by their singleness. They don't really want to talk about it. So I don't bring it up. I don't make an issue of it. And so it really is about asking the question, and then really listening, and then serving, and not offering advice. I think can sometimes, unless they ask for it, I think sometimes that's a bit of wisdom as well. I remember a couple of the comments I got on Facebook was of people saying, I hate it when people who got married at 21 give me advice on how to be single. When I'm like 35 and still single, and they're like, oh, I know what it's like to be single. It's like, you don't really know what it's like to wait this long in singleness. And so really just being sensitive to the person's experience, because every experience is different. And we do need to treat it with sensitivity.
Because it's not making assumptions.
Yeah, it's not making assumptions, but asking and listening, because every person's situation will be different, and the needs and the feelings and the sense of being single and how people respond to that will be very different depending on who they are. Is that? Yeah. Let me Let's turn around and look at the positive aspects of singleness. You made the statement that singleness is a gift to the church. I think that's a very strong statement and it's a very positive statement. Do you want to elaborate on that? What do you mean by that?
Look, I think that when the Bible talks about when you're single, you've got this opportunity to really focus on God. You're not distracted by a spouse. You can really focus on the needs of God and the church. And so I think that there's a real gift in single people. If you have a look at our volunteer base, I know so many people who volunteer are our singles, our young adults that are single. Like, they're so passionate about volunteering. They've got time to do it. And as a young adults pastor, I see it. They get married, they have children, they don't have as much time to volunteer. So I think single people have this time and they have this capacity to be able to volunteer. Now, I'm not talking about all single people here, because I think single mums and single dads probably don't have the same capacity as a 20-year-old living at home with their parents who are single and, working part-time at McDonald's. It's completely different. Again, each situation is different. But I think single people really are a gift to the church in their pursuit of God, like their passion, the way they passionately pursue God and the things of God. That is inspiring, for the church. When we see singles do that well in our church, that's so inspiring. But second of all, there can be a great capacity for singles in terms of time and ability to be able to give of that time to the church. So it's a huge blessing for the church.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Finally, let's just explore this whole area of singleness in our community and in our neighbourhoods. 25% of people living alone in Victoria. How do you think we can be more effective at reaching out to those particular group within our community?
Goodness, I think that, again, asking, listening, serving, I think that's really important. Just ask what their needs are. If get to know your neighbours. I think it's a wider picture than kind of just like looking for single people. It's getting to know your neighbours, knowing who is single in your street, and then thinking about the unique needs of a single person. So as a single person, putting furniture together, my goodness, the number of times that IKEA requires two people
Oh, yes.
put furniture together, and I'm living by myself. It's those little things. So just letting people know that you're available to help if they need it. And meaning it, like following through on that, I think is important. Inviting people into your house for dinner, for Christmas, and being committed to that long term as well. I know sometimes people will be like, oh, come over to family dinner, but then if it's a bad night, the kids are misbehaving or something like that, they'll say, oh, it's not a good night, the kids are misbehaving, or the kids are whatever. I don't have kids, so I don't really know what people say, but the kids are like this, and so it's not a good night for you to come over next week. But really, I think single people just want to be included in the family, even if like the kids are running around and you're struggling to put them into bed. They want to see families, and that is an incredible witness to people, like showing them like, how family life is an incredible witness to people who are single. So really following through on those invitations, like to the end, even if it's uncomfortable, being available, offering things like Christmas or inquiring about their family. Some people I know that are single literally have no family in Victoria or in the community. So, really making yourself available to like Christmas Day, key events. And then I think another really important one, Andrew, that we don't do enough of is celebrating milestones in singles' lives. So as you get to a certain age, you celebrate a big wedding or you celebrate when someone has kids. But if you've been single for a while, like you don't have those big moments of celebration. So celebrating when they finish their university degree, like, register for gifts and make it a thing, like, just like really celebrate it and make the most of it. I think that is really important. Birthdays, celebrate them. Achievement of goals. Like my prayer is that we celebrate them with the same joy and passion and excitement as we would a wedding, because we focus so much on those milestones. But for single people, they're achieving milestones as well, and we should be getting behind that and celebrating it with so much joy and gusto, because it's a great moment for them.
Some great insights there, Brisita, and for those of you who've been listening to this conversation, I encourage you in your life groups to talk about how you can be more effective in ministering to those maybe in your group who are single, or those who maybe in your wider networks are single, and those in your neighbourhood, and celebrating milestones. What an important thing that is to remember as we come up to Christmas, that we can actually celebrate the diversity of the various people in our church community, including those who are single. great insights. Thank you, Brisita. Been great to chat with you, and all the best congratulations on 1 month being married. All the best for your future life together with Lockie.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.